After my father's death, his house became the only part of him I had left. My stepbrother saw it as something to divide, sell, and profit from. I refused. That house wasn't just bricks, it was years of my father's sacrifice. When he forged papers to claim ownership, I fought back. Not for money, but for memory. Hear this, they say a house is just wood and brick, for walls and a roof. But my father's house was a promise carved into the earth with bleeding hands and unbroken will. It took him 17 years to build. It took my stepbrother 3 weeks to try and steal it. What followed wasn't just a legal battle. It was a war over memory, over belonging, over the question that haunts every family touched by death. Who deserves what love leaves behind? This is the story of how I learned that protecting a legacy sometimes means fighting the people who claim their family. Welcome to my Reddit diaries, where every story reveals the unseen battles within families. Don't forget to subscribe and tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? The house stands on Maple Street like a monument to stubbornness. 2 stories, pale gray siding, a porch that sags slightly on the left side because my father ran out of lumber that summer and refused to buy more until he'd saved enough to do it right. He never got around to fixing it. I'm glad he didn't. That sag is proof that perfection wasn't the point. Survival was. My father built this house with his own hands. Not in some romantic, weekend warrior kind of way. He built it because we had nowhere else to go. I was 7 when we started. He was 32, recently divorced, working double shifts at the cement plant, and living in a rental that smelled like mold and someone else's cigarettes. He'd come home with blueprints he'd drawn himself, spread them across our kitchen table, and trace the lines with his finger like he was reading scripture. One night, I asked him why we couldn't just buy a house like normal people. He looked at me with those tired, gray eyes and said, because buying something means it was always meant for someone else first. Building it means it's ours from the ground up. No one can take that away. He was wrong about that last part, but I didn't know it yet. The foundation took an entire summer. I remember watching him dig the trench in the backyard of the empty lot he'd scraped together enough money to buy. He worked shirtless in the heat, his back turning darker each day, sweat dripping into the dirt. I brought him water in a plastic jug. He'd drink half and pour the rest over his head, then ruffle my hair and say, "One day, you'll live here. And you'll remember this." I do. I remember everything. We framed the house the summer I turned 12. By then, I was old enough to hold the level while he hammered. He taught me how to read measurements, how to check if something was plumb, how to sink a nail in 3 swings. He didn't talk much while he worked. He didn't have to. There was something about the rhythm of it, the sound of hammer on wood, that said more than words ever could. This is what it means to build something that lasts. This is what love looks like when it doesn't know how to say the word. That was also the summer he married Linda. She was kind, in the way people are kind when they're trying. A substitute teacher with a soft voice and a son 3 years older than me named Marcus. My father met her at a church potluck he only attended because his sister dragged him there. I didn't understand why he wanted to marry her. We were fine, just the 2 of us. We had the house. We had each other. But he sat me down one night and explained it in the only way he knew how. I'm not trying to replace your mother, but a man gets lonely, son. And Linda, she's good people. Her boy needs a father. You could use a brother. I didn't need a brother, but I nodded because I didn't want to disappoint him. Marcus moved in 2 months later. He was 15, tall, with the kind of confidence that comes from always being the smartest person in the room. He didn't help with the house. He wasn't interested. When my father asked him if he wanted to learn how to install drywall, Marcus said he had homework. When I asked if he wanted to shoot hoops in the driveway, he said he didn't really like basketball. He spent most of his time in his room, headphones on, studying for tests that would get him into colleges I'd never heard of. Linda tried to bridge the gap. She made family dinners, suggested movie nights, asked Marcus to include me in things. But you can't force belonging. It either happens or it doesn't. And with Marcus and me, it didn't. Still, we coexisted. The house got finished piece by piece. My father installed the kitchen cabinets the year I turned 16. He laid the hardwood floors the year I turned 19. By the time I was 22, the house was complete. Not perfect, but done. And my father finally let himself rest. That's when his body started giving out. The first stroke hit him on a Tuesday morning. I found him in the hallway, slumped against the wall, trying to say my name but only managing a slurred whisper. The hospital kept him for 2 weeks. When he came home, he wasn't the same. His left hand shook. His speech was slower. He couldn't work anymore. But he could still sit on the porch and look at the house he'd built. And for a while, that seemed like enough. Linda took care of him. I'll give her that. She cooked his meals, managed his medications, sat with him when the nights got hard. Marcus visited twice. Once at Christmas, once on Father's Day. He'd gotten a finance job in the city, 2 hours away. He sent cards. He called every few weeks. But he wasn't there. I was. My father died on a Thursday in October. The leaves were turning. The air smelled like smoke and cold earth. He went peacefully in his sleep in the bedroom upstairs, the one with the window facing east, so he could see the sunrise. I was holding his hand when he stopped breathing, and the last thing he said, 3 hours before he slipped away, was this: "The house is yours. You earned it." The funeral was small. My father didn't have many friends. He had coworkers, neighbors who waved, a sister who lived 2 states over, but not friends. Not the kind who show up when you die. Linda cried quietly in the front row. I sat beside her, and Marcus sat on her other side, wearing a charcoal suit I'd never seen before, his face unreadable. After the service, people filtered out slowly. Marcus stayed. He walked over to me as I stood by the grave, staring at the fresh dirt, and he put a hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry, man. I know you two were close." I nodded, didn't trust myself to speak. "Listen," he said, his voice careful. "We should talk about the house. About what happens next." I looked at him then. Really looked at him, and I saw it. That flicker in his eyes. The same look he used to get when he was calculating test scores, figuring out probabilities, deciding what his next move should be. "There's nothing to talk about," I said. "Dad left the house to me." His hand dropped from my shoulder. "We don't know that yet." "Yeah," I said. "We do." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We'll see." The will was read a week later in a cramped office that smelled like old paper and lemon cleaner. The lawyer, a man named Donald with wire-rimmed glasses and a wedding ring he twisted when he was nervous, laid it all out in plain language. The house went to me. The savings account, what little there was, got split evenly between Marcus and me. $1,800 each. Linda nodded quietly. I exhaled for the first time in days. And Marcus sat perfectly still, jaw tight, fingers drumming against his knee. Outside, in the parking lot, he stopped me before I could get to my car. "This isn't right. It's what Dad wanted. My mom helped pay bills. I lived there. That house should be split. Your mom moved in after the house was almost done, and you left as soon as you could." His face flushed. "So that's it? You get everything because you stayed." "I stayed because he needed me. You left because you wanted to. Go to hell." He got in his car and drove off. I stood there, keys in my hand, watching him disappear. I thought that was the end of it. I thought anger would fade into distance. I thought we'd go our separate ways and that would be that. I was wrong. 1 week later, an envelope arrived. Legal letterhead. Marcus was contesting the will. He claimed the house was joint family property, that my father had verbally promised him a share, that I had manipulated a grieving man in his final days. I read the letter 3 times, hands trembling. My father had worked himself to exhaustion for that house. Bled for it, dreamed it into existence. And now Marcus wanted to take it, not because he loved it, but because he thought he deserved it. I sat on the porch that night, in the same chair my father used to sit in, and I made a promise. I would fight, not for property, for memory, for the man who taught me that the only thing you truly own is what you build with your own hands. And I would not let greed tear down what love had built. But I didn't know yet how far Marcus was willing to go. I didn't know that the worst betrayal was still waiting in the shadows, dressed in ink and lies. The first thing you learn about legal battles is that they don't move like fights. There's no adrenaline, no knockout punch. Just paperwork and waiting and the slow, grinding realization that justice costs more than you can afford. I hired a lawyer named Patricia Chin. She had an office above a dry cleaner on 4th Street, and her rates were the only ones I could stomach. She was sharp, direct, and when I told her about Marcus contesting the will, she leaned back in her chair and said what every lawyer says when they know you're about to lose money. This could take a while. A while turned into 4 months. 4 months of depositions and document requests and sitting in conference rooms while Marcus's lawyer, a man named Richard, something with perfect teeth and a Rolex, twisted every conversation my father and I ever had into evidence of manipulation. He made it sound like I'd isolated my father, controlled him, whispered poison in his ear until he cut Marcus out of his own legacy. None of it was true. But the thing about lies is they don't have to be true. They just have to sound possible. Marcus sat across from me in every hearing, face blank, like we were strangers negotiating a business deal. His lawyer did all the talking. Marcus just watched. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at me, and I couldn't tell if what I saw in his eyes was anger or something worse. Something like righteousness. Like he actually believed he was the victim in all this. The worst part wasn't the accusations. It was the cost. Every meeting with Patricia drained my savings a little more. I picked up extra shifts at the warehouse where I worked. Stopped eating out. Stopped going anywhere that wasn't work or home or that office above the dry cleaner. The house, the one my father built, started to feel less like a sanctuary and more like a weight I was carrying uphill with bleeding hands. But I couldn't let it go. Letting go would mean Marcus was right. That the house was just property. Something to be divided and sold and forgotten. And I knew better. I knew what that house really was. It was my father's heartbeat in wood and stone. 3 months into the case, I started going through my father's things. Not because I wanted to, because Patricia said we needed evidence. Anything that proved his intent. Letters, emails, notes. Something that showed he meant for me to have the house and Marcus to have nothing. I found the box in the attic on a Saturday morning. It was wooden, handmade, with my father's initials carved into the lid. Inside were blueprints, old photographs, receipts for lumber and nails and bags of concrete dated back to when I was still in elementary school. There were pictures of us building the foundation. Me, small and sunburned, holding a shovel almost as tall as I was. My father, younger than I'd ever really thought of him, smiling at the camera like he'd just won something. At the bottom of the box, I found a letter. It was dated 2 months before he died. Written in his shaky handwriting, the kind he had after the stroke made his left side weak. To whom it may concern, this house was built by my hands for my son. Every board, every nail. I started it before I met Linda. Before Marcus came into my life. They are family and I love them. But this house belongs to the boy who handed me tools in the heat and never asked for anything but to be beside me. If something happens to me, I want it known. The house goes to my son. He earned it. I sat there in the attic, dust floating in the light from the small window, and I cried for the first time since the funeral. Not because I was sad, because I was angry. Angry that I had to prove my father loved me. Angry that Marcus could look at this house and see dollar signs instead of sacrifice. Angry that the law moved so slow while grief moved so fast. I brought the letter to Patricia. She read it twice, then looked up at me with something close to relief. This helps. This helps a lot. Will it end this? She hesitated. Lawyers always hesitate before they tell you the truth. It should. But Marcus's team is aggressive. They'll fight it, claim it's not legally binding, that it doesn't override the will. But it shows intent. That matters. 2 weeks later, we were back in court. Patricia submitted the letter as evidence. Marcus's lawyer argued it was irrelevant. The judge said she'd take it under advisement. We left. I went home. I waited. And then, on a Tuesday afternoon, Patricia called. We have a problem. My stomach dropped. Marcus submitted a document. A deed amendment, allegedly signed by your father 3 years ago. It grants Marcus partial ownership of the house. I couldn't speak. I'm sending you a copy. Look at it. Call me back. The email came through 5 minutes later. I opened the attachment with shaking hands. It was a single-page document. Legal language I barely understood. And at the bottom, my father's signature. Dated March 14th, 2021. I stared at that date. March 14th, 2021. The day my father had his first stroke. The day I found him in the hallway, barely able to move, his words slurred and wrong. The day he spent in the hospital, hooked to machines, his hands so weak he couldn't hold a cup. He couldn't have signed this. I called Patricia back. That's a forgery. Can you prove it? He was in the hospital that day. He couldn't even hold a pen. Then we need records. Medical records. Witnesses. Anything that shows he was incapacitated. I spent the next 3 days gathering everything I could. Hospital admission forms. Discharge papers. Nurses' notes that documented his condition. I even tracked down the nurse who'd been with him that afternoon, a woman named Shanice who remembered my father because he tried to tell her a joke and couldn't get the words out. She agreed to testify. Patricia hired a handwriting expert. A woman with 30 years of experience who looked at the signature under a magnifying glass and said what I already knew. This wasn't written by someone with a neurological impairment. The pen strokes are too smooth, too controlled. Whoever signed this had full motor function. So it's fake. In my professional opinion, yes. I should have felt victorious. But all I felt was sick. Because this wasn't just a legal trick. This was Marcus, my stepbrother, the kid who used to live under the same roof, forging our father's name. Faking a legal document. Lying to a court. Lying to me. I didn't tell Patricia what I was going to do. I just got in my car and drove to Marcus's apartment across town. I'd only been there once, right after he'd moved in 2 years ago. It was sleek, modern, the kind of place that cost more in rent than I made in 2 months. I knocked. He opened the door in a t-shirt and joggers, coffee mug in hand, looking annoyed. What do you want? I know what you did. His expression didn't change. I don't know what you're talking about. The deed, the signature. Dad was in the hospital that day, Marcus. He couldn't even hold a pen. Something flickered in his eyes. Not shame. Something colder. You can't prove that. I already did. Hospital records. Medical testimony. A handwriting expert. You forged a legal document. That's fraud. He set the coffee mug down on the table by the door. Crossed his arms. So what? You're going to send me to jail? I'm going to tell the truth. What you do with that is up to you. the truth. He laughed, but it was bitter. The truth is that house should have been split. My mom paid bills. We lived there. You got everything because you played the devoted son. Well, congratulations. You won. I didn't win anything. I just refused to let you steal it. His jaw tightened. Get out. You forged Dad's signature, Marcus. You lied to a judge. For what? Money? You wouldn't understand. Try me. He stared at me for a long moment. And when he finally spoke, his voice was different. Quieter. Almost broken. I wanted to matter. Just once. I wanted to be the son who got something. But I was never good enough for him. Not like you. I felt something twist in my chest. Not sympathy. Not quite. But something close to it. That's not Dad's fault. And it's not mine. Just go. I left. Drove home. Sat in the driveway for 20 minutes before I could bring myself to go inside. And when I finally did, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered. Is this Daniel? Yeah. Who's this? This is Mercy Hospital. We're calling about Linda Cartwright. She's asked to see you. The hospital room smelled like disinfectant and something sweeter. Something dying. Linda lay in the bed by the window, thinner than I remembered, her skin paper white against the pale blue sheets. And 4 drip fed into her arm. Monitors beeped softly in the corner. She looked small, fragile. Nothing like the woman who used to argue with my father about leaving his work boots by the door. She saw me standing in the doorway and tried to smile. It didn't quite work. Daniel, thank you for coming. I stepped inside. Didn't sit. The nurse said you asked for me. I did. She glanced toward the door. Marcus was here earlier. I sent him to get coffee. We don't have much time. Time for what? She closed her eyes for a moment, gathering strength. When she opened them again, they were wet. I know what he did. The papers. The signature. The lies. I felt my throat tighten. Then why didn't you stop him? Because I was angry too. Her voice cracked. When your father died, I felt invisible. Like I'd given 8 years to a man who gave everything to a house and a son who wasn't mine. I know that's not fair. I know it's not true. But grief doesn't care about fair. I pulled the chair closer to the bed and sat down. My hands felt heavy in my lap. Marcus learned that anger from me, she continued. After the funeral, he came to me upset. Said you were getting everything. That we were being erased. And I didn't correct him. I should have. But I didn't. He forged a legal document, Linda. That's not anger. That's fraud. I know. Tears slipped down her cheeks. And when I found out, I confronted him. He broke down. Told me he just wanted to matter. That he spent his whole childhood watching your father build something for you while he studied alone in his room. He said he thought if he could get part of the house, it would mean he'd belong to something. I looked away. Out the window. At the gray sky and the parking lot below. That doesn't make it right. No, it doesn't. She reached for my hand. Her grip was weak but insistent. But it explains it. And I'm asking you, Daniel, please, don't destroy him over this. He tried to destroy me first. I know, and I'm not asking you to forgive him. I'm asking you to let him live with what he's done without it following him forever. He's my son, and I'm dying. This is the only thing I have left to ask anyone. I sat there, her hand in mine, and I thought about my father, about the way he used to say that holding a grudge was like carrying a stone uphill. Eventually, your hands get tired. Eventually, you have to decide if the weight is worth it. I'll think about it, I said finally. She squeezed my hand. That's all I can ask. Marcus came back 10 minutes later with 2 coffees and stopped cold when he saw me. His face went through several emotions at once. Surprise, anger, something that looked almost like shame. I'll leave you 2 alone, Linda said softly. No. Marcus set the coffees down. I'll go. Marcus, I said. Stay. He looked at me like I'd just spoken a language he didn't understand. But he stayed, stood by the door, arms crossed, waiting. I stood up, faced him. The court's going to see the evidence. The hospital records. The handwriting analysis. They're going to know you faked that signature. He nodded stiffly. Said nothing. Your lawyer's going to drop you. The judge is going to rule against you. And there's a chance you'll face criminal charges for forgery. I know. Then why did you do it? He was quiet for a long time. Long enough that I thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he spoke, voice barely above a whisper. Because I needed proof. Proof that I was part of something. That I wasn't just some kid who happened to be there. Your dad built that house before he ever met my mom. Before I existed. And every time I walked through it, I felt like a guest. Like I didn't belong. When he died and left it all to you, it just confirmed what I'd always known. I was never really his son. Something shifted in my chest. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But understanding. Dad didn't leave you out because you didn't matter. He left me the house because I was there. Because I handed him nails and learned how to mix concrete and asked him questions about foundations. You could have been there too, Marcus. He would have taught you. But you chose college and careers and a life somewhere else. That was your right. But you don't get to come back after he's gone and claim what you weren't around to build. His face crumpled. Not dramatically, just a slow collapse. Like something inside him finally gave way. I know, he said. I know. The final court hearing happened 3 weeks later. Patricia presented the hospital records. The handwriting expert testified. Marcus's lawyer withdrew from the case. The judge took less than 10 minutes to rule in my favor. The will stood. The house was mine. And the forged document was referred to the district attorney's office for potential prosecution. Marcus sat silent through all of it. When it was over, he walked out without looking at me. I found him outside on a bench, head in his hands. I could have walked past him. Part of me wanted to, but I thought about Linda in that hospital bed. About my father teaching me to build things that last. About foundations. I sat down next to him. I'm not pressing charges. He looked up, eyes red. What? I talked to the DA. Told them I don't want to pursue it. They said without my cooperation, they probably won't move forward. Why would you do that? Because my father wouldn't have wanted me to. He built that house with love, not revenge. And I'm not going to destroy you over it. Marcus stared at me for a long time. Then quietly, I'm sorry for all of it. I was wrong. Yeah, you were. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Do you think he ever saw me as his son? I thought about that. Really thought about it. I think he tried. But you have to let people in for that to work. You kept yourself separate. That was your choice. But it doesn't mean he didn't care. Marcus nodded slowly, wiped his eyes. Your mom passed 2 days ago. I know. I'm sorry. Me too. We sat there for a while longer. Not as brothers. Maybe not even as friends. But as two people who'd both lost something and were trying to figure out how to live with the empty space it left behind. Eventually, Marcus stood. I should go. Yeah. He started to walk away, then stopped. Turned back. For what it's worth, I'm glad he had you. Someone should have been there to hand him the nails. Then he left. And I never saw him again. I went back to the house that evening. Sat on the porch as the sun set. The same porch my father sat on. The same view he looked at after 17 years of building. And I made myself a promise. I would take care of this place. Not because it was valuable, but because it was his. Because every board and nail and crooked window frame was proof that love doesn't have to be perfect to be real. A week later, I noticed a crack in the front steps. The concrete had shifted over the winter. I could have hired someone to fix it, but I didn't. I went to the garage, found my father's old tools, mixed a batch of concrete the way he taught me, and patched it myself. It's not perfect. You can still see the seam where the new concrete meets the old. But that's okay, because this house was never about perfection. It was about showing up, doing the work, building something that lasts. Some legacies are made of stone. Others are made of forgiveness. My father left me both. And now, every time I walk through that front door, I carry them with me. Not as a burden, but as a foundation strong enough to hold whatever comes next. Because that's what he taught me. That's what the house means. You build it, you protect it, and you pass it on. Not because it's yours, but because it's proof that love, when given freely and worked for honestly, can outlast anything. Even anger, even betrayal, even death. The house still stands on Maple Street. And so do I. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and join the My Reddit Diaries family. We share real stories about real people facing the impossible choices that define us. Drop a comment below and let me know what you would have done in my situation. And tell me, where in the world are you watching from? New stories every week. Until next time, remember that the strongest foundations aren't built overnight. They're built one choice at a time.